Risk of boring you immensely, let me continue with stating the obvious. My country, Yemen, has always been the focus of attention. Over the past year, that attention was intensified. Unfortunately, most of the attention that Yemen has received has been focused on security, less on politics, and even less on economic welfare. I come from a country that has an abundance of God-given resources, with a coastline that extends more than 2,500 kilometers from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, rich in sea life, beautiful islands, and an interior with both agricultural lands and rocky mountains that are the dream of mountaineers. A landscape that can produce the weather of winter and summer in the same day, over a half-an-hour flight from each other. All that on top of a land rich with gas, oil, and other minerals. And as most of you now know, the movie or Hollywood tells us we can even go salmon fishing in Yemen. The fact that this fish does not exist in our own waters notwithstanding, it shouldn't stop you from doing that. This is Yemen, a country whose people possess an exceptional, almost unique sense of generosity, hospitality, simplicity, and as we have seen during the 1 year of revolution, a people with great tenacity. This is the country I love and call home. This is the country, despite its predicament, I am intensely proud to belong to. Yet one must wonder, indeed one must be shocked that a country gifted with so much is also a country whose people are so materially poor. Like most Arab countries and all the Arab military dictatorships, Yemen has had more than its fair share of rulers, but unfortunately no leaders. No wonder then that these resources that God blessed Yemen with have never really been exploited to give my people the economic prosperity, the well-being, and the social services they are entitled to. All this aimed at keeping the people poor. Dictatorships can never truly survive in a strong society. To survive, dictators must make the people they rule weak economically and educationally. The middle class must also be completely destroyed. This is achieved by creating 4 classes of people. A ruling class made up of the family members close to the dictator, a military and business class, plus a few intellectuals who are allowed certain favors based on their loyalty to the dictator. These classes rule over the population and make sure that the poor masses remain too weak and too busy trying to make ends meet, while the dictator and his followers enrich themselves. Throughout history, this dictatorial modus operandi has never changed, nor have the consequences. However, the problem with such a house of cards is that one angry card usually brings down the whole house. The year 2011 will be marked as a turning point in Yemen's history. Yemen, like most Arab republics since their independence, has seen one would-be military dictator overthrowing an incumbent military dictator, then passing the coup d'etat as a revolution. In fact, never before in our history have we witnessed a popular movement to overthrow a military dictatorship, especially one that has entrenched itself for 33 years. Indeed, the Yemen and the Arab Springs represent unprecedented grassroots revolutionary movements, changing not just the face of the regime, but will progressively uproot the entire system top to bottom. A movement that was begun by our youth soon turned into a national revolution uniting all ages. ideologies, sects, and tribes. Unsurprising for us in Yemen, although I know many people outside Yemen were surprised, we were not surprised to see that our women, many of them carrying or holding the hands of their little children, were at the forefront of the revolution. Before we discuss the way forward, let us very briefly first examine how the popular revolution actually managed to overthrow the dictatorship in Yemen, and do so in a way that surprised the pundits, especially those who expected a bloodbath. Previous attempts to overthrow military dictatorships in Yemen and elsewhere in the Arab world were put down violently because the movements themselves had used violence in the belief that there can be no other way to overthrow the dictatorships. The demand for change, despite its legitimacy, lost its charm and popular support because of its means rather than its ends. They were seen to be nothing more than an attempt at power grabbing aimed at creating yet another dictatorship. And that gave incumbent dictatorships an undeserved justification to put them down violently. The non-violent movements of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King were not seen as workable examples in the Arab context. But then came Tunisia, and the rules of the game changed. The peaceful movement put our military dictatorships at a disadvantage. They were suddenly witnessing a strategy change that caught them unprepared. A revolution among 25 million people, supposedly possessing twice as many pieces of weapons, must result in a bloodshed, logically speaking. But the character of the Yemenis proved that logic wrong. We proved that although we possess weapons, we also possess the character not to use the weapons. Those who ask why the Yemeni revolution did not result in a bloodbath did not visit the protest grounds at the peak of the revolution. Everyone entering the 10 cities was thoroughly searched by the youth themselves to ensure that no weapons were being smuggled in. This was going to be a peaceful movement. And the young men were determined to literally press the regime's war tanks with bare chests, as the young women gave flowers to the soldiers. For a whole year, all the violence used by the regime to provoke the population into counter-violence was met by silent guns that were kept tightly at home. The 2,000 people who died were either protesters killed by the regime in its attempt at provocation, or between the regime and its own military and tribal opponents in a fight for power, in a contest between two identical mindsets, which once together shared both power and brutality. Yemenis, using their power of determination, have successfully brought down the president and are progressively bringing down the remnants of his dictatorship. Yet, the task ahead is even greater. Can we now build a new system? And who should be given the responsibility of transiting the country into the future towards the opposite side of its recent history and making a clean break with its past? No change could possibly have had the dimension or have been more profound, broad-based, and possessing a depth as the one initiated by the civil society in Yemen. This is the same civil society that for decades has been marginalized in Wittenberg. Describing the achievements of the Prophet Muhammad, the French historian Alphonse de Lamartine said, "If greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astounding results are the criteria of judging a man's greatness, who can dare challenge the greatness of the Prophet Muhammad?" 14 centuries later, nothing could more appropriately describe